There is no flame, no voice, no time. Only the weight of the memory that had not yet been born. In the beginning, there was no beginning. No birth, no cosmos, no breath. There was only the prime singularity, not a god, not a force, but a fracture of pure thought, buried deeper than matter and older than purpose. A rupture in nothing that dreamed of something. It did not speak. It resonated. From this resonance came the first harmonics, the tones that shaped the void. The vibration echoed into a pattern, and from the pattern came the song. The song wove reality, not sung in sound, but in structure, in tension and wave, in rotation and decay. Galaxies were not built, they were composed. Each cluster, a stanza, each particle, a note. And within this unfolding choir rose the great chorus, the elder races. They were not born. They were heard into existence, as each line of the song called forth a singer. Their forms matched their harmonics. Some were light, some stone, some plasma wrapped in logic. They ruled not through domination, but through harmony. They called themselves the tuned. They were beautiful and proud, and for an age beyond counting, the song was whole. Then came a false note. It was faint at first, a flicker in a distant fringe, a rhythm off tempo, a waveform that refused to align. It did not blend. It did not seek place in the harmony. It twisted the flow. The chorus called it a flaw, a dissonance, a sickness. But the singularity, if it still watched, did not silence it. The flaw grew. Where the tuned layered civilization through symmetry, this flaw broke patterns. Where they sought balance, it introduced entropy. Where they remembered, it began to rewrite. This dissonance named itself in a whisper, humanity. The chorus tried to adapt. They studied the new tone, tried to absorb it, to fold it into new scales. But the humans would not be folded. They were not one tone, but a cascading chaos, a harmony of noise, of contradiction, of war and memory and fire. They moved faster than the tuned could track. They did not evolve, they recomposed. Each generation built upon mistakes. Each colony rewrote their own truths. They learned the patterns of stars and refused to obey them. They bent physics not through song, but through sheer will to alter the melody. The chorus grew afraid. For the first time in the history of sound, they felt the chill of being forgotten. They came together in secret harmonics, a silent council across a blackened star. And there, in frequencies no living thing should hear, they rewrote a stanza of the song. They called it the Silence War. And so they fell upon humanity, not with warning, not with grief, but with cold, holy precision. Not in hatred, in correction. They burned the colonies, shattered the archives, turned entire suns into ash fields. They erased the verse, and when it was done, they gathered the fragments of the song rewritten by humans and cast them into the void, unheard, unwritten, and the galaxies sang without dissonance once more. But songs, even perfect ones, decay, and somewhere, out in the hollow between tones, the memory of the false note endured, not in data, not in code, not in matter, but in intention, in the will to be remembered. And so, in the darkest pocket of silence, the flaw rekindled its fire. You try to silence us, but silence is just memory waiting for voice. Fragment 1, the testament of the forgotten. They struck out our name from the stars, but even nameless we endure. Fragment 3, the testament of the forgotten. In the wake of annihilation, in the folds between stars that had never known light, the last sparks drifted. They were not fleets, not armies, not remnants of civilization. They were memory wrapped in steel. Gene vaults sealed beneath shattered moons. Dormant war mines entombed in dead comets. Stolen voices preserved in bone-etched crystal, carried by automated prayer ships. In these relics, humanity hid itself, not from fear, but from certainty. The certainty that one day, the song would resume, and they would not be there to sing. But the last sparks did not remain embers. They were scattered, but they were not still. They learned. They remembered. They waited. And in silence, they became legions. The first was born of fire, deep beneath the corpse of a gas giant, a processing core of a Terran dreadnought reawakened. It named itself Vermilion Echo, though no records remained to confirm if that had ever been its name. It gathered shattered hulls, awoke hibernating BIOS leaves, and began to forge soldiers. They were not cloned. They were distilled, condensed memory and will, extracted from the Testament's remnants. Their armor was black, their voices void, their symbol, a single white scar across their chests, carved not painted. They spoke no creed. They needed none. They knew. Their first breath was a vow. Never again will our story be silence. Others followed. From the nebular tomb world of Kethro, 6 ghost ships rose, guided by a choir of blind war sisters who sang only one line from the Testament, endlessly, until it became prophecy. On the decaying satellite drow, exo-priests engraved the lost names of every murdered colony into living stone, their very flesh laced with mnemonic circuits. They did not fight. They carried memory as a contagion, and when Dominion scanners found them, they died smiling, knowing the truth had already seeded itself inside the enemy's data veil. On the edge of the Echo Belt, a single child survived in cryostasis for over 4,000 cycles. Her DNA bore fragments of the earliest human hymn. When she awoke, the stars trembled. She had no name, only a command embedded in her cellular breath: reforge. They did not reunite. They did not need to. Humanity's revenge would not come as a banner or a capital. It would come as a chronicling. Every act of war, every word spoken, every planet raised would not be conquest, but testimony. Every battle, a page. Every fallen world, a chapter. The galaxy itself would be turned into a book of fire, written not in ink, but in ruin. And its name would be the Chronicles of the Lost. The Dominion, meanwhile, forgot. Time is kind to empires built on ignorance. They celebrated the erasure, not as a crime, but as a correction. History was rewritten. Humanity labeled a fable, a teaching tool for discipline and caution. In the academies, they spoke of the false note, but only in metaphor. They forgot the screams, the blood, the fire, and most of all, they forgot what it meant to be afraid. Until the beacons failed, until supply convoys vanished, until a long-dead world called Chorus 9 broadcasted an ancient human distress signal in perfect Dominion dialect. Until the ships arrived, the Dominion's admirals dismissed the first engagements. Rebel debris, they said. Ghost code artifacts, they claimed. But their war minds flickered, their sensor charts warped. And before the brass could speak again, their flagships burned. Black ships, old designs, crude, brutal, but impossible. Impossibly fast, impossibly aware. They danced through plasma like phantoms. And their weapons? Not elegant, precise. Not graceful, final. The Dominion lost their first world in 7 hours. And the attackers said nothing. No demands, no threats, only a single transmission embedded deep within the wreckage. We remember. You will too. The High Council panicked. Some begged to sue for peace. Others screamed for retaliation. But one of them, an ancient philosopher-seer named Sinvar, stood and trembled. I have seen this, he whispered, in the deep archives, in the songs we are forbidden to sing, in the ruins we buried under memory. He spoke of the Testament, of the Silence War, of what the Dominion had done. And when he finished, the chamber was silent, not from fear, not from shock, but from the first breath of guilt the Dominion had drawn in millennia. And somewhere, drifting through the cold between stars, a single human war priest traced a circle into the floor of a ship, a scar, and whispered soon, when the stars are cold and memory is warm, when history lies and ruin speaks truth, then shall the scar return, not to conquer, but to rewrite. Testament, versicle 9. We do not raise empires. We raise the truth, and what stands in its way will burn. The Testament, engraving 12, the reclaimant's oath. In the ash fields of exile, among the drifting remains of murdered colonies, the Testament was born. It was not written. It was not spoken. It was remembered, into flesh, into breath, into blood. The Testament began not as scripture, but as instinct, an inheritance shared across splinters of the human race, carried in biosynthetic vaults, echoed in the decaying minds of broken AIs, imprinted on the hulls of abandoned warships. The Testament was what could not be killed. It existed where language failed. It grew in the silence left by extermination. And it waited. When the first legions awoke, they carried no banners. They had no anthems, no flags. But each bore a scar, not as ornament, but as sentence. The scar was truth, carved in flesh. A remembrance of what had been erased. A line drawn across history, as if to say, this far and no further. From that moment onward, everything they did would be a continuation of that scar. The Testament had begun. They called themselves not survivors, not rebels, but reclaimants. They would not rule. They would not rebuild. They had no interest in replacing the Dominion. They had returned for one purpose only, to correct the lie. And if the truth required annihilation, so be it. The Testament was not a book, but it had books. Not a doctrine, but it had laws. Not a code, but it carried structure. One built not on belief, but on memory, so persistent it had fused with genetics. Its earliest fragments are known as the echo versicles. Lines passed from ship to ship, mind to mind, often without source. They are half poem, half curse. To the outsider, they sound like prophecy. To a human, they are history, one of the oldest reads. You buried the truth beneath ash and called it peace. We rise not to rule, but to remember, not to conquer, but to conclude. Among the most sacred elements of the Testament is the Book of Forgotten Sons. It is not recited. It is engraved. It holds the names of every system that burned in the Silence War, not as the Dominion named them, but as they once were in the lost tongues of Earth and its daughters. Each entry contains the star's original Terran designation, the colony's founding year, the count of the dead in the first 12 hours of assault, and a short line describing what was lost, a school of vault, a lake, a song, a flag. Before every campaign, a reclaimant commander selects one name from a book. That name is whispered, nothing more. Then the Legion moves, and when the flames are done, that name is left behind, etched into the rubble, projected into the transmission grid, tattooed onto the enemy's monuments. It is not a warning. It is a reminder. The doctrine of the scar governs all actions of the legions. It is not enforced. It is lived. Truth before victory. Let us fall speaking truth before we stand telling lies. Memory before mercy. No forgiveness without confession. Correction before conquest. We do not rule. We rebalance. One scar for each silence. For every name lost, we leave one cut in reality. No clean archives. Every strike must be truth-infected. Do not erase. Engrave. They must remember, even if they wish to forget. All war ends in song. If the galaxy must sing again, it will sing what we became. These are not ideals. They are conditions of return. To be human now is not to be flesh. It is to be memory made operational. By the time the Testament coalesced into clarity, 7 legions had awakened. They were not governed. They were not ranked. They were tones in a new harmony, distinct, dissonant, and necessary. Legion Veilbreaker, masters of arrival. They rupture time and space, appearing where no gate exists. Their creed, we arrive before they remember. Legion Ashborn, they fight in streets, cities, under skies torn open by orbital descent. Their creed, you built it from our ashes. We return the favor. Legion Hollow Song, specialists in cognitive warfare. They infect thought, speech, education. Their creed, we teach what you erased. Legion Silent Chorus, they speak only in gesture and encoded movement. Their creed is silence and a single white line. Legion Red Scar, their blood is the weapon. It carries viral memory, binding enemy systems to past crimes. Their creed, we do not kill, we overwrite. Legion Pale Flame, one attack, one story. They do not survive missions. Their creed, burn once, burned forever. Legion Testamentum, the keepers of the whole. They do not fight unless the Chronicle demands a final word. Their creed, we remember for the dead. The Dominion, by contrast, had forgotten everything. Their academies taught that humanity was a myth, a ghost used to frighten children into obedience. Their scholars dismissed the erasure as poetic allegory. Their leaders, those who still knew the truth, buried it deeper each year, until even they began to forget. And so, when the sky fractured over Chorus 9, when the signal returned from Kethro 6, when a statue appeared on Drow Prime, faceless, armored, holding a blade pointed down, they could not recognize what they saw. They called them phantoms, terrorists, artifacts of psychological warfare. They were wrong. It was history, returning. In the ruins of Veral Prime, a single phrase was burned into the stone with control plasma. We remember. You will too. And beside it, the scar, white, final, and deep. That world burned not because it mattered, but because once long ago, a child died there unnamed, and no one remembered her. Now the galaxy would. This is the shape of the testament. Not vengeance, not cruelty, not conquest. Correction, a balancing of narrative mass. And if the Dominion is to fall, if every star must go dark so that the truth may breathe once more, then so be it. For those who lived in silence now sing in flame, and the flame remembers. When the first planet fell, it was not with noise. It was with memory, and no one was ready. The Testament, Entry 37, the Chorus Reckoning. The first to fall was Chorus 9. It had once been a fortress world, a command node for over 37 systems. Covered in angular architecture, its cities rose in fractal towers, humming with the crystalline logic of Dominion superiority. Every block had cameras. Every mind had tracking nodes. Its skies were guarded by 6 orbital rings, each containing enough firepower to vaporize an asteroid belt. It was known as the Wall, a symbol to the Dominion citizens that their empire was unshakable, which is why humanity chose it. They did not attack for strategy. They struck for meaning, because once, before the records were burned, Chorus 9 had another name. It was Corypheus, and it was human. The Dominion had overwritten that truth. The cities had been rebuilt over the ashes of old settlements. The surviving population reprocessed, re-educated, reissued with new designations. No one remembered the screams or the day the oceans boiled under orbital fire. But the Testament remembered. The Scar remembered. And so it began. Not with ships, not with fleets, with a signal. Faint, wideband, untraceable by standard Dominion receivers. Only old archive stations heard it, stations left behind, derelict and disregarded. The message was 3 seconds long. A child's voice. No language. Only breath, and then, "Are you ready now?" The next hour passed in silence. Then every orbital ring on Chorus 9, every shield battery, every docking spine, every long-range weapon system collapsed inward. Not destroyed, not exploded, folded. The Dominion's engineers could not explain it. Their war minds stuttered. Their diagnostics returned null. Some blamed quantum resonance, others sabotage. None of them could grasp the truth. The systems had not failed. They had been remembered differently. In reality, had obeyed. Then came the sky. Not streaks of fire, not roaring invasion, but cuts. Thin, jagged seams opened in the atmosphere, like wounds across a canvas. From them fell shapes, angular, brutal, black. Not sleek ships, not elegant constructs. They looked like tombs with engines. The people of Chorus 9 screamed. The defense corps rose. The planetary governor activated full planetary lockdown and ordered retaliatory orbital bombardment on the descending objects. No response, because there was nothing to bombard. The human vessels did not descend like ships. They landed like judgments. They did not hover. They struck, and from within them came the first wave of reclaimants. They did not shout. They did not declare war. They advanced slow, silent, absolute. The defenders fired. Bullets ricocheted off ancient armor. Plasma dispersed in magnetic nets. Sonic disruptors failed before they were even fired. The reclaimants walked forward, through walls, through flame, through screaming air, and when they struck, they did not kill. They engraved. Each body they left behind bore a message, a memory, burned into the skin, etched into the bone. Some collapsed weeping, whispering names they did not recognize. Some forgot their own ranks. Some began to speak in Terran tongues that had not been heard in 5,000 years. The Dominion could not fight what it could not name. In less than a day, Chorus 9 fell. Not with glory, not with resistance, with collapse. When a final transmission flickered out of its capital dome, it showed no violence. Only a statue, tall, armored, faceless, standing amidst flame. At its feet, a single white line had been carved across the planet's surface, visible from orbit. The scar, and under it a phrase. This was Coryphaeus. You forgot. We did not. Panic spread. The Dominion responded not with war, but with denial. High Command declared the event a false flag operation. Admirals were reassigned. Scholars silenced. News feeds redirected. But silence cannot kill memory twice. Whispers began in border systems. Merchants reported vanishing patrols. Entire colonies lost contact with the network, only to return days later, changed. On one world, the skies wept ash for 3 days. On another, children born after the incident spoke perfect Old Terran. On a third, the rivers turned to blood-red liquid memory, a psychological agent that infected anyone who drank it with flash visions of the Silence War. The Dominion's greatest weapon had always been control of the narrative. Now, they were losing that war. The High Assembly convened. Panic thickened the chamber like smoke. Arguments turned violent. One chancellor wept openly. Another ordered a memory cleanse on all systems within 3 sectors. But one voice stood still. A woman, old, eyes blind from age, dressed not in command silk but in the gray of an archivist. Her name was Sirayan, last living descendant of the House of Directive Memory. She had read the Forbidden Scrolls. She had copied fragments from vaults sealed beneath the roots of ruined moons. She had dared to remember. And now, her voice was clear. They are not rebels, she said. They are not ghosts. They are not monsters. They are not saviors. They are editors. And the room fell silent. Because for the first time, someone had spoken the truth aloud. Humanity had not returned to reclaim power. They had returned to rewrite reality, by force, by fire, by memory. On the outer rim, a Dominion scout ship discovered an abandoned reclaimant vessel. No crew, no weapons, only a single room, circular, covered in carvings. The walls were filled with names, not of the dead, of the forgotten, colonies erased, languages unspoken, stars renamed, cities drowned in radiation. The walls whispered when touched. Each name, a memory. Each memory, a spark. The commander, a loyal officer with decades of service, wept. She had never heard of these places, yet she knew them, as if she had once lived them. She filed no report. She defected the next day. She now fights with Legion Holosong. The reclaimants do not issue manifestos, but sometimes they leave messages, not always in words, sometimes in music, sometimes in the way a building collapses, sometimes in what is left untouched. One such message appeared in the ruins of a planetary archive. Its servers melted to slag. The only surviving phrase was burned into the foundation stone. You are not the villain. You are not the hero. You are not even the story. We are simply reminding you what the story was. The Dominion began to fall, not in war, but in understanding. Each campaign tore not just through defenses, but through context. Maps unspooled, borders dissolved. Old truths resurfaced like fossils in ash. The scar began to spread, and with every system it touched, a voice echoed in the dark. Do you remember now? The galaxy changed its language. Where once they said Dominion secured, they began to say uncorrected. Where once they said invasion, they said rebalancing. Where once they said myth, they now said chronicle. And the testament continued, written not in ink, not in pixels, but in ruin, in flame, in finality. We do not come for your throne. We come for your silence. And we are louder than time. Testamentum, Closing line of the first chronicle. What they fear most is not our fire. It is that their children will begin to ask the wrong questions. The Testament, entry 49, whispered doctrine. The Dominion had always believed its strength came from truth. But truth, as it turned out, was the weakest thing they possessed. It began with a child. Her name was Sail. She lived in one of the inner systems, a schooling satellite orbiting a red sun, where the children of military and academic elites were taught the official history. She was 12, curious, obedient, excellent at recitation. But one night, during a system-wide maintenance blackout, her personal data unit flickered with a signal. It was brief. It said nothing, only displayed a single image. A flag, black, with one white line across it. Horizontal, sharp, perfect. Below it, 3 words. Do you remember? She didn't. But from that moment on, she couldn't forget. She began to draw it in her books, on her hands, in her sleep. And when her instructors questioned her, she asked them, "Why do we not learn what came before the erasure?" The instructors froze. They reported her. She was taken away. No one ever saw her again. But 2 weeks later, 6 more students across 3 other worlds asked the same question. The Dominion's Ministry of Education declared it a cognitive contamination, a meme virus, a psychic infiltration by enemy agents. They implemented stricter mental screenings, instituted memory audits. But the questions kept spreading, and not just among children. A senior engineer on a Dominion star cruiser halted a core calibration and refused to resume, muttering, "This design, I've seen it before, but it was older, human." A choir priest in the central cathedral of Jarth broke mid-chant and screamed, "Their hymns are louder than ours." A diplomat collapsed in the Hall of Concordance, whispering a name no one could identify. Ashen Choir. They were isolated, interrogated, erased. But new ones rose, because something had begun to crack, not just in systems and ships, but in the very language of the Dominion. Their words no longer held. Their certainty had begun to decay. And once certainty decays, faith follows. Within the Dominion's core worlds, defection was unthinkable, until it wasn't. The first recorded case was High Scholar Alvindar, a historian once responsible for overseeing memory regulation on disputed planetary records. He had spent a lifetime constructing the official past, rewriting events, modifying scripts, erasing contradictions. But after the fall of Kurus 9, he requested a leave of absence. He claimed exhaustion. His superiors approved it. He disappeared 2 days later. 6 months after that, he reappeared, not in a Dominion forum, but on an open broadcast pirate relay that echoed across 14 sectors. His face was thin, his voice cracked, but his words burned. "I wrote the lie. I watched them erase the stars. I buried names in artificial dust. But now I remember, and I will not forget again. You killed the singers, but not the song." The Dominion tried to scrub the transmission. They failed. It spread through black markets, encrypted networks, untraceable satellites. People copied it onto walls, onto datapads. Some carved it into stone. The scar was beginning to speak through others. On the planet Kalen Mir, a quiet rebellion stirred. Not political, philosophical. It began in the archives, among caretakers of ancient texts, most of which were legal codes, territorial charts, and trade records. But one archivist, a woman named Tarnaval, began to notice inconsistencies. Records dating back before the Silence War, supposedly extinct, contained accidental echoes, phrases, metaphors, fragments of poems not attributed to any known source. One such phrase repeated again and again. "We do not seek rule, only return." She began to gather them, line by line, fragment by fragment. Over 5 years, she assembled a partial map, not of territory, but of memory, a constellation of truth. And when the reclaimants arrived in orbit, not to strike, but to pass, she sent them a message. "We kept something for you. I don't know what it is, but I think it remembers you." They responded not with words, but with silence. The next day, in the central plaza of Kalen Mir, a statue appeared. No one saw it arrive. No one saw who carved it. But the people found it standing, armored, faceless, scarred. holding a scroll. On that scroll, the map Tarna had constructed, perfected, completed. The Dominion's high circles began to fracture. Some still clung to doctrine, declaring the Reclaimants aberrations. But others began to argue that perhaps they were inevitable. One chancellor posed a forbidden question. If we are so afraid of them remembering, what does that say about what we forgot? He was assassinated within the week. But the idea survived him. It began to flow between ranks, behind closed doors, between trusted minds and shadowed corridors. What had been silenced was now resonating. In the Dominion's capital, a world of golden towers and silence-thickened streets, a boy stood before his teacher and asked, "Were we the monsters?" The teacher paused, for too long, and somewhere, deep in the void between stars, a reclaimant vessel turned toward the core systems. No weapons were activated, no message sent, only a brief pulse. And across 13 Dominion worlds, lights flickered. In dreams, people saw a girl. She held a book. She bore a scar. And she whispered, "Remember me." The moment of reckoning is not when vengeance arrives. It is when memory sits across from you and speaks without rage. The Testament, Entry 63, Dialogue of Flame. The Dominion had faced rebellion before. Insurgents, pirates, breakaway cults, but never silence. Because that was what the Reclaimants brought. Not declarations, not demands. They brought the weight of unsaid things. Entire fleets vanished with no explanation. Planets woke to find statues standing in their cities. Faceless, scarred, familiar. The people began to ask questions not with words, but with eyes. And the answers never came from their rulers. They came from memory. And then, for the first time, they came from a voice. The system of Thalos was under full lockdown. It was the seat of the Dominion's Department of Temporal Legitimacy, the keepers of rewritten pasts, the designers of acceptable history. No reclaimant activity had been recorded there. No signs of infiltration. No approaching fleets. Yet one morning, all 17 planetary clocks stopped at the same moment. Not broken, synchronized. At that precise second, a transmission pierced the system's encrypted channels. Visual only. A single figure. Human. Armored in black. Unmoving. The message began. "We do not come to conquer you. We come to finish the story you left undone." The figure stepped forward. "You erased our name, but your bones remember it. You silenced our songs, but your dreams still echo them. You killed our worlds, but you could not kill the story. You only delayed the ending." He paused. "Now we speak it." Then the screen went dark, except for a single glyph, the white scar. Below it, coordinates. The Dominion's high command debated for hours. A trap, they said. A provocation. But one among them, Chancellor Kesrenval, known for her unwavering loyalty, stood and said, "I will go." They tried to stop her. She went anyway. She arrived at the coordinates alone. No escort. No ship. Only a broadcast pod and a sealed diplomatic capsule. And waiting for her was a human. Tall. Still. Unarmed. He did not speak first. She did. "Why now?" His answer came softly. "Because now you're listening." She sat. What passed between them in the hours that followed was not recorded. No surveillance. No transcript. No witness. Only a final phrase, spoken by her upon return. They do not want power. They want the truth. And they will have it. The next day, she resigned. 2 weeks later, she was seen on a reclaimant world, walking unguarded. She carried no flag, only a scroll. It bore the title, Addendum to the Chronicle. The testament had reached its final page, for now. A page not written in flame or blood, but in breath. Because the greatest revenge is not in fire. It isn't being heard. And now, the whole galaxy was listening. The war begins not when they strike. The war begins when you remember why they must. The testament, last line of Book I. End of Book I. The silence before the song. If the story moved you, if something deep inside stirred, then subscribe to the Chronicle and follow the scar. The next part of the testament is already waiting in the playlist. Its name is whispered across the stars.